Hey guys, so let's get started. So today we're going to be focusing on the topic of anatomy and physiology, but we're going to primarily focus on parts of the nervous system. Next slide, please. Okay, so first we can get started with the central nervous system. So this is the main part of the nervous system, which includes the brain and the spinal cord. It acts as the main control center for the body, and it takes in sensory information and generally, it just helps organs and body parts to communicate with each other. It's the reason why we can intake sensory information such as sight, feeling, and taste, as well as motor activities such as muscle movement. So it contains and consists of two main parts. The brain, which is what you can call the headquarters or the control center of all activity that happens within the body. All signals that get picked up from the brain, from the nerve, all travel to the brain to get processed. Next, we have the spinal cord, which is basically, you can say that it's like a messenger for the brain and the nerves that are situated all around your body. It sends signals from the receptors at the end of your nerves to the brain and vice versa. Next slide, please. So first is the brain. So the brain is like one of the most major and important organs of your body, I would say. It's divided into several parts, each with their own specific and unique functions. First is the cerebrum. It's basically the largest part of the brain, and it's responsible for intelligence, creativity, emotion, and memory. It's mainly composed of four parts: the frontal lobe, which controls most of the motor function, such as like the movement of limbs, memory, emotions, and social interaction, and it works very closely with the limbic lobe. There's also the hippocampus that's also located in the limbic lobe, which plays the biggest role in learning and memory. Next, we have the parietal nerve lobe, which receives the signals that are produced from the sensory nerves, such as touch, pressure, temperature, and pain. So any sensory information that's picked up from the nerves all go to the parietal brain to kind of get processed. It also allows us to have like a spatial awareness around us where we're able to have some sort of mental map, you would say, of the environment. Finally, we have the occipital lobe. So this is the one that interprets what we visually see with our eyes. So whatever image is taken in by the eyes, it gets sent through the optic nerves to the occipital lobe to then get processed. So we can actually make an understanding of what we're actually seeing instead of just blanking out. It also helps with color determination and depth perception. If the occipital lobe is damaged, it can cause vision impairment or blindness. Next is the cerebellum. So this part of the brain mainly controls the muscle movement, coordination, and balance. So if you do manage to get it damaged, it can cause you to be imbalanced and, for example, have tipsy movements as well as speech impediments. If you guys heard about cerebral palsy, you know that it affects the movement of the body in some way. A cause of this disorder could be damage to cerebellum because it involves movement. Fun fact, the cerebellum only accounts for 10% of the entire weight of the brain, but it contains 80% of all neurons in the brain. Next slide, please. Okay, so next we have the brainstem, which connects the brain and the spinal cord, but it also controls many other autonomic functions such as breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. The thalamus, which any sort of bodily senses such as touch or taste, like senses besides smell, has to go through the thalamus first to get processed before getting sent to the cerebral cortex, which consists of the frontal lobe and such. This is so that it's better for interpretation. And finally, there's the hypothalamus. So this is actually a gland that works with the pituitary gland. And since it is a gland, it's a part of the endocrine system. It reacts to chemical signals given by other parts of the brain, and its main function is to basically maintain homeostasis, which is the internal balance within the body. So basically, if body temperatures or heart rates are too high or too low, signals are sent to the hypothalamus. which then it releases hormones to the pituitary gland. And then what the pituitary gland does is that it releases the hormones given by the hypothalamus to then directly release it into the bloodstream. Next slide, please. So the spinal cord. This is also another one of the very important parts of the CNS, the central nervous system. And it's basically a long tube of nerve tissue. And you can think of it like a highway where it connects the brain to the peripheral system that's made of like nerves that's situated all around the body. It allows for signals and information to come into the brain and for the brain to as well send out messages to organs and body parts. Its main function is to send out motor commands to various muscles around the body, and that's how we can move and have reflexes such as the gag reflex. It also accounts for autonomic functions where it sends those commands to muscles you can't consciously control, such as the beating of your heart. Because you don't really have to think about pumping the blood with your heart because the spinal cord does it for you. The part of the spinal cord that controls this type of function is called the medulla oblongata. If it weren't for that part, your heart would actually pretty much stop beating. Sensory information is also being received by the spinal cord, and then it gets sent to the brain. So if damage does come in contact with the spinal cord, injuring the lower portion of the spinal cord can result in like the lower body, like your legs, getting affected, while injuring higher up of the spinal cord can affect everything below that point, which could pretty much be like the entirety of your body. And that's pretty much the generalization of the central nervous system. Next slide, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Hamza, and today Hajo and I will be presenting the second part of the nervous system, which is the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system comprises of nerves branching from the brain and spinal cord, and is responsible for forming a communication network with the body. It is also responsible for conveying sensory data from various organs like eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin to the brain. The peripheral nervous system also facilitates transmission of motor commands from the brain to muscles and organs. It also regulates essential involuntary processes such as heart rate, breathing, and digestion. In summary, sensory refers to things that go to the brain and spinal cord, and motor commands refers to the messages that leave the brain and spinal cord, and involuntary processes or processes that happen in the background. Next slide. In the back of the brain, there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves which serve as pathways for transmitting electrical signals between the brain, face, neck, and torso. The cranial nerves are essential for a wide range of sensory function, including taste, smell, and vision, and hearing. Finally, cranial nerves play a huge role in motor functions, such as facial expression, eye, and tongue movements. Next slide. The 12 cranial nerves each have different functions. Cranial nerve 1, the olfactory nerve, is responsible for your sense of smell. Cranial nerve 2, the optic nerve, transmits visual information from the eyes to the brain. Cranial nerve 3, the oculomotor nerve, controls eye movement and pupil constriction. Cranial nerve 4, the trochlear nerve, controls downward and inward eye movement. Cranial nerve 5, the trigeminal nerve, enables sensation in the face and controls jaw muscles for chewing. Cranial nerve 6, the abducens nerve, controls lateral eye movement. Cranial nerve 7, the facial nerve, controls facial expression, taste sensation, and tear and saliva production. Cranial nerve 8, the vestibulocochlear nerve, is responsible for hearing and balance. Cranial nerve 9, the glossopharyngeal nerve, controls swallowing, taste sensation, and monitors blood pressure. Cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve, regulates heart rate, digestion, and controls muscles involved in speech and swallowing. Cranial nerve 11, the accessory nerve, controls neck muscles and assists in shoulder movement. Cranial nerve 12, the hypoglossal nerve, controls tongue movements for speech, swallowing, and chewing. Next slide. Here I'm going to talk about the three most common cranial nerve disorders. The first one I'm going to talk about is Bell's palsy, which is temporary facial paralysis caused by inflammation or viral infection. Treatment for this disorder often includes corticosteroids, eye care, physical therapy, and pain relievers. Trigeminal neuralgia is severe facial pain caused by the trigeminal nerve. This is the nerve that dentists often numb to reduce your pain. Treatment options include medications and surgical procedures. Vestibular neuritis is inflammation of the vestibular nerve caused by severe vertigo. Also, the vestibular system is what is responsible for your balance. Treatment includes medication and vestibular rehabilitation therapy. Okay, next slide.
Hello everyone, my name is Hodger and I'll be presenting the second part of the peripheral nervous system, which is the spinal nerves. So the spinal nerves are divided into 5 different parts. There are the cervical nerves, the thoracic nerves, lumbar nerves, sacral nerves, and finally the coccygeal nerves. Next slide, please. So these 5 different nerves have different functions. The cervical nerves innervate the muscles of the neck and provide motor control. They supply sensory information from the scalp, neck, shoulders, and parts of the upper limbs. They contribute to the formation of the cervical plexus, which controls the diaphragm and provides sensory innervation to the neck and shoulder region. The thoracic nerves innervate the intercostal muscles, which are responsible for breathing and the movement of the rib cage. They provide sensory information from the chest, upper abdomen, and parts of the back. They help regulate autonomic functions such as heart rate, blood pressure, and digestion. The lumbar nerves innervate the muscles of the lower back, hips, and thighs, providing motor control. They supply sensory information from the lower abdomen, internal genitalia, and parts of the lower limbs. They contribute to the formation of lumbar plexus, which controls movement and sensation in the lower limbs. Finally, the sacral nerves innervate the muscles of the buttocks, pelvis, and posterior thigh, providing motor control. They supply sensory information from the buttocks, perineum, and parts of the lower limbs. They also contribute to the formation of the sacral plexus, which controls movement and sensation in the pelvic region and lower limbs. The coccygeal nerve supplies a small region of skin over the tailbone and provides minimal motor control, motor function, and sensory innervation in the coccygeal area. Next slide, please. The cauda equina is a group of spinal nerves at the lower end of the spinal cord. It carries signals between the spinal cord and the lower limbs, pelvic organs, and perineum. The cauda equina controls the muscles of the lower limbs, allowing for movement and coordination. It transmits sensory information from the lower body, providing the ability to touch, to feel touch, pain, and position. The cauda equina is important for bladder and bowel function, sexual function, and sensation in the lower body. If the cauda equina is compressed or injured, it can cause symptoms like back pain, weakness in the legs, loss of sensation, and problems with bladder or bowel control. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over the 3 most common spinal nerve disorders. Number 1 is a herniated disc, and it occurs when a soft cushion-like disc between your bones in the spine gets damaged or put pressure on nearby nerves. It can cause pain, numbness, tingling, or weakness in the area where the affected nerves travels. Treatments include rest, physical therapy, pain medication, in some cases surgery. Spinal stenosis happens when the space within your spine narrows and squeezes the nerves, usually due to aging or wear and tear. It can lead to back pain, numbness, or weakness in the legs, which can get worse with activity. Treatments include managing pain, doing exercises, using assistive devices, and sometimes surgery to relieve the pressure on the nerves. Sciatica refers to a pain to pain that travels along the path of the sciatic nerve, which runs from your lower back down to the back of your leg. It can be caused by a herniated disc, bone spur, and sometimes conditions that irritate the nerves. Treatments usually include pain relievers, exercises to stretch and strengthen the back, and sometimes injections or surgery if the pain persists. Next slide, please.
Hello, my name is Nathaniel, and I will be presenting the parts of the eye. Now, the main function of the eye is to capture light and convert it into electrical signals for the brain to interpret. The information from the eye is sent to the occipital lobe of the brain through the optic nerve. Now, how we interact with the environment is greatly affected by the human's eye capacity to adjust to various lighting conditions, focus on objects at varied distances, and process a broad range of colors and shapes is fundamental to how we logically interact with the environment. Additional functions and how it helps. Now, I listed 3 of these things because I find just so much interest in them. 3 of them are the peripheral vision, pupil dilation, and tear production. The peripheral vision is how you notice things around you without having to turn your head all the time. Your peripheral vision is like having a wide-angle lens on a camera. When you're using a camera, a wide-angle lens captures a lot what's around the main subject. The pupil dilation is with light. The pupil contracts or gets smaller in bright environments, such as when you're outside on a sunny day to reduce the amount of light entering the eye. From being overly exposed to light, which could cause irritation or temporary visual loss. The response to darkness is different. In contrast, the pupil dilates or expands to allow more light to enter the eye in a dim or dark condition, such as night or in a dark room. This enhances the vision in low light and improves the eye's ability to identify features and objects. Tear production is made by glands and to help keep the surface of the eyes moist and clean, preventing dryness and protecting against foreign particles and infections. Tears also contain enzymes and antibodies that contribute to eye health. Did you know that there was an experiment called the Molyneux's question, and the scientists gathered 5 subjects that were blind at birth but later regained their sight from surgery? He first sat them down on a table where he placed a sphere and a cube in front of them. He told them to distinguish the 2 objects if it was a cube or sphere. Now you may think that it's simple because a cube would have flat surfaces as well as sharp edges and corners, while a sphere has a round and smooth surface. But the results of the experiment gave an unexpected answer. The subjects, in fact, could not differentiate the 2 objects. This experiment concluded that the result was achieved because blind people don't really have a visualization of what a sharp corner or a round surface should look like. The eyes really allow you to view things and get a perspective of getting stored away from your long-term memories. Now, going over the parts of the eye. The white part of the eye, the sclera, is a tough outer coat that protects the inner components of the eye from external injuries and foreign objects. The cornea, the clear dome-shaped surface that covers the front of the eye and protects it from ultraviolet radiation. The pupil, the opening of the center of the iris through which regulates how much light enters the eye. Iris is the colored part of the eye which controls the size of the pupil, thus the amount of light that enters the eye. Lens is located behind the iris. The lens further focuses light into the retina. The lens sends light and directs it toward the retina. The ciliary muscles is something that helps the lens focus on things like a camera, and this process is called accommodation. Retris is inside of the eye and it looks and feels like jelly. It is like a soft skeleton and gives the eye its shape. The layer of rods and cones is the retina, and it is in the back of the eye, and it senses light and converts it into electrical signals. It contains a photoreceptor cells and is sensitive to light and color and intensity. The fovea aka the macula lunea, is not showed in the picture, but it is right here where it says cones and rods, and its function is to help with the central vision, and it's like helps with reading, identifying objects, and recognizing things. The optic nerve is the most critical for your vision. It is an extension of your CNS. The optic nerve transmits visual information from the retina to the brain. This works by transmitting electrical impulses from your brain to your, from your eyes to your brain. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that the eye has its own immunology? This is called immune privilege. This means that our regular immune system does not interact with the eye the same way as other organs. This is also called ocular immune privilege, and once your immune system finds out you have eyes, you're blind, and this can happen at any time. So theoretically, if tonight your immune system finds out your eyes exist, when you wake up in the morning, you will go blind. Next slide, please.
Okay, I'm Alex and I'll be presenting the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is part of the peripheral nervous system. It's the nervous system that controls all the subconscious functions of the body. So some that may come to mind are like heartbeat and breathing. Those are all autonomic functions because you're not like telling your heart to beat or telling yourself to breathe. Well, I guess you could stop breathing, but you can't, because it's all going on subconsciously through signals in your brain and the peripheral nervous system, nerves, and that communicate back and forth. So basically, yeah, the nerve signals they communicate through the brain and through also like hormones and glands there in your brain. So stuff like the amygdala, uh, the pineal gland, they all send hormones that tell your certain organs to do what and when subconsciously. Next slide, please. All right, yeah, an example is heartbeat, because your heart has to push blood to get the oxygen inside your lungs, and then push blood throughout the body so it can replenish cells with oxygen, and that's kind of how your body functions, really. But that's all going on while you sleep, while you're awake, while you're exercising, while you're not exercising, it goes on whenever. So these subconscious functions are really important, but you're just not aware of them, but they're happening 24/7. So yeah, the heartbeat example ties into breathing, which is another autonomic functions, because you have to breathe in, and then the blood collects the oxygen from the lungs, and then you breathe out waste like carbon dioxide. So these even go on when you're like sleeping, when you're not even awake, when you're not conscious, because these are subconscious functions.
Well, thank you so much. That was really like a lovely in-depth uh, view of the nervous system. Does anyone have any questions? Or if there aren't any right now, I can get started. I was super interested. Did you guys get to research like the different parts of a nerve? I know you guys went over like the functions of the nerves themselves, but did you get to go over like what makes the nerves themselves function? Any one of you can answer who did the presentation.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. Were you able to go over how the nerves themselves function? Like different parts of the nerve itself?
Sorry, yeah, that's a very complicated question. That's the structure of a nerve, like a neuron, and the role is kind of to help communicate signals throughout the body. And so obviously there's one end that's like connected to the brain, and then through different electrical and chemical signals, kind of travels and innervates different parts of the body so that you can turn things like input to output, so like motor output. Yeah, that's really good, like maintaining a membrane potential. And the membrane potential is maintained through like different types of ions going in and out of the cell, and the positive and negative charges kind of help to transmit those signals. So this is like a most basic kind of explanation of the concept. But I really did appreciate the presentation. And obviously this is not like all of the body systems in the body. If you ever take anatomy or physiology, you'll go over other body systems, like the heart, the brain, muscles, bones and stuff. But I think the nervous system is a very important part of physiology because it helps with communication, with function, all very critical components of stuff that makes up like what you do in your daily life. Yeah, and I really like the examples that you provided, Nathaniel, for the eye as well. And they're all really interconnected. So kind of in a neuroscience and talking about the nervous system, we talk about the eye, we talk about somatosensory, we talk about taste. And then I think Thompson mentioned the different types of nerves in the face, so the craniofacial nerves. And so you'll learn that like the ear and the vestibular system, just like balance, are very closely related. And then Nathaniel showed us the optic nerves, and those actually connect to the optic chiasms and the optic radiations, which are on the side of your head, and they go to the occipital lobe, and that helps you kind of see. And it's like a very complex like network. And so yeah, this is all very interesting. And thank you for sharing. In the future, we can definitely go into different body systems if people are interested. And yeah, this group really did start early and put a lot of effort in the little details in the diagram and the animations. So a really strong effort. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that's all we had for you today. Yeah, definitely feel free to share like which systems you're interested in. And our interns are very happy to help create a presentation for that. Yeah, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to stick behind. But otherwise, yeah, have a great weekend.